back to the 4th episode of Investors Unite, and if you're looking to ignite your real estate, you have came to the right place, so make sure you go subscribe. We're your hosts, Stefanie Kabidi and
Skyler Plot.
And we are going to be talking about all things exit strategies when it comes to real estate investing, what you should be doing, and we're going to talk about the best exit strategy in 2023. So make sure you guys watch the full episode and take notes.
Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and we will continue to give you all the educational content that we can think of.
That's right.
So, as Stefanie had mentioned, this is going to be a video based off of exit strategies in the year of 2023. The reason of why that's important is just because things have changed in the real estate market within the past year.
Yeah.
Pretty dramatically.
It's been hard right now for flippers. I see some flippers having their property sit on the market multiple days, but like a lot longer days on market. You see, just because the interest rates are rising, and whenever interest rates rise, that's when the buyer pool just shrinks.
Right.
So
you're not seeing those multiple offers the same day that the property is listed, where they're going $10,000, $20,000, even $30,000 over the asking price.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, with the rising interest rates, as I'm sure many of you are aware of, it is just letting the properties sit on that market just longer than we've seen within the past couple years, honestly. I've noticed in our area specifically that there is a lot more inventory that's coming to the market, mm-hmm. and the demand's not nearly as much as there as it was previously. So we're gonna. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say there's gonna be investors out there. Some, like, we were at the meetup a couple of days ago, and the guy that was speaking at the meetup, he was like, "Who thinks we're in a cold real estate market? Who thinks we're in a hot real estate market?" And most of the people said we're in a cold real estate market, but there are some people that said hot. So it all depends on your perspective of the real estate business, of what your strategy is.
Right.
So like some people that are flippers, they're gonna say, "Oh, we're in a cold market. Like, it's not doing as well for us." But for the wholesalers, they're gonna be like, "Oh, we're in a hot market. We got the right buyers and stuff like that. We're getting the deals done."
Possibly. I would say, to contradict that a little bit, I mean, wholesalers, a majority of the time, are selling to flippers or signing those contracts to flippers.
Yeah.
So if the flippers are starting to back out and slow down a little bit, that could play a little bit on the wholesalers. Just the amount of deals they're doing as well. Mm-hmm. So it really just depends on the wholesaler's buyers list, I would say.
Yeah.
If you have a lot more rental property,
like buyers,
like anybody with a larger portfolio who's just looking to acquire those properties and hold on to them for 3+ years, then they're going to have a much larger buyer pool than anyone who, pretty strictly works with flippers.
Yeah, for sure.
So those are some things you have to consider. But yeah, so Stefanie and I will go through and discuss like some of the benefits of what's going on in the real estate market right now, mm-hmm. along with some of the downfalls and who's really just going to get caught on some of their properties. Just not doing the smartest investing in the past, because we all know 2022, mm-hmm. you could overpay for a property and somehow still walk away with a pretty substantial profit.
Yeah, we actually had a deal. It was sent to me. Someone it was a referral from someone that sent me the deal, and it was a seller carryback deal.
Okay.
It was the one out in, what was it? I think it was Front Street. Remember we went, I texted you it.
We went on Front Street.
And then we were running numbers, and it turns out like the investors, they got a seller carryback, and they were looking to sell that.
Oh.
And they got it. They just overpaid, even though with like seller financing.
I do know what you're talking about.
Like, you can like overpay. You can give what the seller wants for the property, the market value.
But if you don't have those favorable terms behind you, then it doesn't really matter either way.
Yeah. So like they were screwed. Like, we couldn't even do the deal. Like, it just didn't make sense on our end because the property needed work.
Yeah. Like ARV, I think on that property was roughly 180, and they were asking like 165 or.
It was just crazy.
168, and then again, it still needed like at least $40K worth of work.
Yeah.
And even though there was a seller carryback option with that property, no matter what we did, the numbers still wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But talking about seller carrybacks and kind of just creative financing as a whole, I feel as though that's going to be one of the biggest exit strategies, or I guess you wouldn't call it an exit strategy.
I don't know. That's not my biggest.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay. I
got something bigger and better.
Right. I'm trying to find out. But just from, the listening that I've been doing, just observing the market myself, with these higher interest rates, if you're able to get favorable terms with a seller, then doing a seller finance kind of option on a property is definitely a great choice when you're dealing with this kind of market.
Yeah, and it all depends on your goals. So, like, if you want to, build your rental portfolio, okay, shoot to get those subject to seller financing types of deals. But if you're looking for quick cash and you want to just continue to build up, all right, turn more towards the wholesaling, and then the fixing and flipping. Like, we personally, we're not focused on that right now. But people are still, there's good flippers out there that are buying at the right price where they're still making money.
Of course.
But there's some that are, going under the water just because they're not buying right. You have to make sure you're buying right. And it's still just scary because you never know if you're going to get a buyer for that,
Right. No, definitely. So, I don't know. What Stefanie kind of just mentioned about what is your goals, I feel as though that's going to play a huge factor when you're starting to invest. Whether you are just looking to make the quick cash, like you said, or just hold on to the rental properties, it really is going to determine your exit strategy when going into a market like this.
Yeah.
Like Stefanie said, though, flippers, I'm not going to deter anybody away from flipping, but this is definitely a market where you want to be a lot more cautious and really run your numbers appropriately. Just be conservative as possible. And just make sure that you have some wiggle room in case, anything goes wrong.
Right.
Like we're seeing, they're still predicting another 5 to 10% drop on the average market price for real estate, just as a whole within the nation. Obviously, that's going to vary from market to market. So that's another thing, is getting to know your market really well, just kind of seeing if you have people moving there, if you have people moving out of there, what your population increase is like, what the percentage of that would be. Knowing your market is a huge part. So aligning, I guess, just to kind of summarize, you got to align your goals with your exit strategies along with knowing your market. So as Stefanie said, there is some really good options for wholesalers right now as well.
Yeah.
So if you do have a buyer pool who's looking to build onto their rental portfolio, you're able, there's so much to talk about.
So it's let's break down wholesaling. So that's the first main strategy, right? So where you're not actually buying the property, you're just flipping a contract, and you're not putting any of your own money into it. You're not doing much, right? It's pretty simple. So you go find a seller that's in some sort of distress. You see if they want to sell. They say yes. You guys get it under contract for, a specific price. Then once you have it under contract, you take that contract to the title company with your earnest money deposit, and then you're able to market that contract. So you don't want to post the contract out on social media and stuff, but you have that equitable interest where you're able to, go and speak to other, investors or other, buyers that may be looking for a deal that you have, and say, hey, I have this property, I'm looking to get this amount for it, and just market it that way, whether that be on the MLS, whether that be on Facebook Marketplace. And then once you find a buyer, after you say you got it under contract with the seller for $100,000, you found a buyer for $110,000, and then you go to title company, you guys close on it, you make $10,000, so you make the difference. So that's basically what wholesaling is.
That'd be through an assignable contract.
Right.
But there is two options, though. One of them being assignable and the other one being a double close. Do you want to explain that one just a little bit?
Yeah, so when you're doing an assignment contract, that means everyone's on the HUD. So that means that the buyer's going to see how much you make. That also means the seller's going to see how much you make, which is fine. We say typically anything below, $15,000, $10,000, go ahead and do an assignment. But if you're making a lot of money and you don't want the buyer or seller to see how much you're making, you're going to want to do a double close where you are seeking transactional funding. So it's going to be the same thing as like a regular wholesale deal where you get the property under contract with the seller, you go market it out to find a buyer. The only thing is you reach out to transactional funding when it comes time to close so that you have the money where that transactional funder is funding the first transaction. So it's going to be your first closing. You're going to actually close with the seller. And then they're going to take a small fee, you know, whether that's like 1 point, 2 points. It all depends on the transactional funder and, you know, your relationship with them.
Right. So with that strategy, you are actually owning the property for a short period of time.
Yeah. So you're owning it for, it could be a couple of hours, right?
Yep.
And then you're going to have that second closing with the end buyer. And that's where the funds come over. So then, you know, after that HUD is created, after everything is done with that, you're going to get your money. The transactional lender's going to get their, you know, small little fee, and everything is done. So that's just another way you can do it where, you know, you don't have to show everybody how much you're making.
Okay. And another piece that goes into wholesaling that I feel like a lot of people overlook is you wholesalers, like, obviously you understand what the process of wholesaling is. And I'm speaking to anybody who's done wholesale deals in the past. Mm-hmm. You understand how to acquire those leads, turn those leads over into deals, and then, you know, profit off those deals. But something you're really going to want to consider as a wholesaler is understanding the other exit strategies or your buyers.
Yeah.
So whether it is a flipper or a long-term rental holder, knowing who you're going to be marketing this specific property to is a key part when it comes to getting it under contract for that certain price. So we'll just do a brief outline for a flipper. Somebody's typically looking at the ARV of a property. They're going to take 70% of that initially just for, you know, holding costs, realtor fees, closing fees, that kind of thing.
Right.
And then they're going to subtract their repair costs or rehab costs from that number. Whereas if you're looking at somebody who's just planning on holding this property long term, maybe even though the property is not in the worst condition and you're not getting the best deal on it, it could possibly still work out for you in the end.
Yeah.
Because if you're just buying this property, let's say you did get a little bit of a discount on it, more so than if it were to go to on the market and be available to the open public. But you have it under contract for the certain price. Say most wholesalers wouldn't go for it just because they're like, a flipper wouldn't buy this. There's not enough margins there, you know?
Yeah.
Where as a rental person, I mean, they could go in and they could purchase the property at still a discounted price compared to the market value,
right,
and be happy with it, and the wholesaler could still, you know, get that whatever, $5,000-$10,000, yeah, their fee,
yeah,
whatever that is, off that property. So knowing your different exit strategies, even as a wholesaler, can be very important, especially going into a market like this.
Most definitely. And that's like the main one, like a lot of people talk about, but like not a lot of people know, you know?
Yeah.
Even agents, it's so crazy because a lot of agents don't even know what real estate wholesaling is.
No,
and it's like, come on now. We're in 2023.
I had this showing. It was back on that Lingelstown Road duplex. My agent for that one, when we first met, she was kind of asking like, how much do I know about real estate? And I told her how we own our company and everything, and we do wholesaling, novations, that kind of thing. Right. She was like, huh? And I was like, how long you been doing this for? She was like, 25 years. And I was like, you don't know what wholesaling is? She was like, I think I've heard of it before.
That's
I was
crazy.
like, oh man, you're missing out.
That's insane.
You gotta find out.
Yeah, like, so, I mean, that wholesaling is the number one strategy, right? No, well, not for me. No. Like, but I'm just saying for like the real estate world, like,
for the beginners.
Everyone says start with real estate wholesaling. Right,
because you're going to learn all the exit strategies through that real estate wholesaling.
Yeah, because that's not my best one. That's not my favorite.
I mean, it could be easy money, but once again, it just has to align with your goals. So whatever you're looking to get out of real estate, whether you're trying to build that long-term wealth or just get, you know, a few $1,000s pretty quickly. So
I would say the next one would be the fixing and flipping. That's, you know, a big one everyone talks about. And, I mean, that one's kind of self-explanatory where you actually buy it. This case, like, I don't recommend using your own money. If you have the money, you can. Go for it. But it's always great to use other people's money as long as you know what you're doing. So get private money, get hard money.
Right.
Either or is great.
And as a beginner, this can be a hard step if you're looking to get private money. Just because a lot of those lenders are looking for somebody who has some experience already in the field. So that's definitely something else to be aware of. Say if you are a beginner and you're kind of set on, this HGTV kind of real life fix and flips, then it's going to be a little bit of a harsh reality when those private money lenders are like, you haven't done a deal before. Like, I can't trust you with my money, even if the property could be a really good deal.
Or they may lend to you just at a really high interest rate.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, you could go with it. Just make sure you run your numbers properly where it works out. Because once you do a couple of deals with that hard money or private money lender, then that's room to negotiate where you can say, hey, I'm bringing you a lot of deals. I'm getting you a lot of money. It's time for us to lower that interest rate. And, you build that relationship as the time goes on. But at the beginning, it's definitely going to be high. Unless you find another real estate investor that's already experienced and you partner with them on that deal. We
touched a little bit on the last episode here of partnerships and when going into real estate, if it's appropriate to have a partner or not.
Yeah.
So we won't really go too far into that now, but
make sure you check out that episode.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, fix and flip. So for 2023, I'm gonna give it a thumbs down, personally.
Thumbs down.
Thumbs down. Obviously, as she was saying, there are fix and flippers out there who know what the hell they're doing, but
it's just like, it's so high of a risk, like during the past, like last 2 years, I mean, it was great. Like flippers they were making so much money.
Yeah, they probably made so much money they can just relax all of 2023.
Literally, like when I did my flip, we were able to profit like $60,000, and I was partnering up with an experienced real estate investor.
So you sold for how much over asking?
I think it was like $25,000 over asking, all cash.
And how many days on the market was it?
It was like 3 days.
Yeah, so you don't get that.
You don't see that now. Like it was completely insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I don't know. Flipping, it's just not where our mindset is as business partners, but everyone's different. Everyone's business is going to be different. Everyone watching this may have a different perspective, and you may have like a construction background where you're like, I want to do the work, I don't want to hire anyone, it's going to be cheaper, blah blah blah. So
like if you already are like a GC or a general contractor, then you kind of have a great idea of what rehab's going to cost.
Yeah.
You know what you can buy the property at, what you can sell it. Oh, not always what you can sell it for, just because it's a general contractor. But yeah, make sure you're running those numbers appropriately, being conservative on that ARV price at the end of the day, because like I said, I mean, we are experiencing a lot of price cuts in the market currently. Just because the interest rates they're still going up somehow.
They were supposed to have I heard two more hikes or something like that, but I don't know. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, no one knows for sure exactly what's going to happen yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think I listened today to the average Freddie Mac loan is currently 6.42%.
Okay.
Right now, which 5 months ago or so, I believe it was about 2.7.
That's crazy.
So it's tripled. It's insane. So that just takes your mortgage 1.5 times what it would have been.
It's insane, and that's why it's scary to flip, right? But even if the right deal came, I don't know.
You don't think you'd do it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like because flipping, it takes up a lot of your time too, driving back out, going back and forth.
Yeah.
But let's get right into the next strategy, which is, I would say, seller financing.
Seller financing.
Yeah.
All right. So, sorry. Another person threw me off. So seller financing kind of just falls into the category of creative financing as a whole, which there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle that go into that. If you are as a full-on beginner, I don't recommend you go straight into seller financing property or subject to or any kind of creative finance deal until you feel as though you know exactly what you're doing. Like, you have to have your numbers completely laid out appropriately. You have to, there's so much that goes into it. Like, I don't even know where to start.
I mean, I feel like you can do any deal. If you're new, you can do any deal as long as you have a partner to guide you or a mentor to guide you, right?
Right.
With seller financing, you do want to be even more, I mean, with everything in real estate, you want to make sure you have your numbers right. But with seller financing, you're literally having the seller, they're going to become the bank, and you're just going to be making payments to them, other than like traditional real estate where, you know, typically you go to a bank and you make payments to the bank.
Right.
So seller financing is a great tool because you were just saying how like interest rates with the bank is around 6% or so, whereas seller financing,
you can a lot of the time negotiate those terms to a 0% interest.
Right. 0% interest, sometimes 0% down payment. So it can be super favorable towards you. Now, you got to make sure like you and the seller agree on that. But hey, if you tell the seller, I'm able to get you, you know, the market value price or the price that you're looking for, which may be over market value, are you willing to accept the terms that I need?
Right.
You know,
and that's another huge part of seller financing is price is not that big of a deal. Unlike any other strategy where price is the main I wouldn't say pain point, but the main, I don't even know what the word to use, like the main part of going into any deal.
Yeah.
Where seller finance, that's not the case. Along with subject to, I guess we'll dive deeper into seller finance before we
let's do like with seller financing, it's not like we're gonna go like a full-on breakdown because we'd be here all night. But seller financing can be a phenomenal tool for, you know, anyone to use, right? It's just you have to make sure you say it correctly for a seller to understand it, because a lot of sellers get confused when it comes to these creative financing types of deals. But it's a great strategy at the end of the day. And I mean, if we're talking about now the next one, which is subject to, that's basically when you're taking over the seller's mortgage, and you know, you are making the payments to the mortgage, where you don't have to go get pre-approved from a bank or get a pre-approval letter. They're not checking your credit. They're not, you know, checking your credit score. You're literally taking over the seller's loan payments in the mortgage.
And I'm going to back it up a quick step just to go back to seller finance real quick.
We're all over the place.
I know, I'm sorry. As you guys can tell, like, none of this is scripted. This is
we're just going off
we're just talking. And it's a little bit later at night compared to when we usually do it. So I don't know if y'all can tell. Not as high energy as usual. It's been a long day.
I know.
We did close on our property today, though. So
we did.
That was exciting.
Yeah. A long deal, because that deal...
We were working on that since October.
October 31st.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm happy it's done with.
But what were you saying with the seller subject to, or?
Seller finance. So, I had mentioned how price is not one of the main things when going into a seller finance deal.
Yeah.
And then we had discussed how there are favorable terms for the buyer and or the seller. Something that's fair to both parties. I wanted to go a little bit deeper into what those terms kind of consist of, just to give them an idea of, in case they don't really know too much about seller finance. So when going in, I mean, obviously, if you're acting as the seller is the bank, then if you go to a bank, they're going to give you an interest rate. They're going to give you a length of time for the loan. And they're going to give you typically like a down payment amount that you're looking for. Where these are all things that are negotiable when going into a seller finance kind of deal. So I'm going to lay it out like as easily and simply as possible for any of you kind of newbies to understand. I kind of want to just give an example. So let's say a property, it needs maybe like $10,000 worth of work. It's mainly cosmetic. Let's say ARV, we'll use easy numbers. So let's say ARV is $200,000. So after repair value, once it is fully fixed up, is $200,000. But it needs about that $10,000 worth of work.
Yeah.
Another thing with seller finance is if you're strictly doing a seller finance kind of property, this mortgage has to be completely paid off.
Right.
Where there is no remaining balance, or else you would fall into the subject to category. But yeah, so let's say property's ARV $200,000, repair about $10,000. Let's say property owner wants $220,000.
Yeah.
Any other strategy, you go into this, you're like, no deal. You can't wholesale that. You can't fix and flip it.
Can't make money on it like that.
I mean, even if you use a traditional mortgage, you're still going to be in the hole for a little bit. Where seller finance, you could get in there, right? I was about going to lease options.
I mean, it's like, it's a creative way. You could do so many different things with it.
Right.
You know?
I'm going to stay away from that for now. That's a little bit more advanced. But yeah, as a seller finance kind of investor, you could look at this property and be like, okay, well, let's say the rental value on this $200,000 property is
$1,800.
Yeah, we'll go for $1,800 a month, right? So typically you want it to be about 1% of the purchase price, but in this case it doesn't really matter as long as you have those terms in place. So let's say that property needs $10,000 worth of work. In order to rent it out, you need, let's just say $5,000. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect, just because it is going to be a rental. I mean, you want to make it nice, obviously, for the family who's going to be living there. But you don't need to go all in like it is a fix and flip. So let's just say you throw a couple $1,000s in just to get it rent ready.
Yeah.
Let's say the seller only wants, well, let's say you're, not the seller wants, but let's say you're able to negotiate with the seller to have a low down payment. Let's say like $5,000. So you're all in for $10,000. $10,000. You've now acquired this property. You're renting out for $1,800 a month. Let's say that you never even bring up interest rate to the seller.
So there's 0% interest.
Once again, this whole deal is hypothetical. Like, this is not something that's been in place.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 0% interest, and you're strictly paying down that principal. So let's say the seller is a little bit older and he's kind of weary on this idea because he doesn't want to hold a note for the next 30 years.
You're saying if someone were to use this as a primary residence, or
no.
Okay, so like you're saying, you and the seller agree on, what, $1,000 for your principal payment.
Oh yeah, I was getting to that point.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I was like, where's she going? No, so yeah, you're on for like $10,000, right? And let's say this buyer or the seller is older. He's like, I don't want to have you making me payments for the next 30 years. Like, I might not be alive.
Yeah.
And that has to go through my kids. They probably don't want to deal with it, blah, 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 blah. You're like, no, it doesn't have to be for the next 30 years. You're like,
yeah.
What if I just make you payments for the next 5 years, and then I'll give you a balloon payment, which would be the remaining balance of that principal, or of the purchase price. And they're just like, I mean, I'm okay with that. Like,
right.
And then they're going to start asking questions like, well, what if the tenant's not paying? What if there's maintenance that needs to be done to the property? The property's still in my name. Like, do I have to take care of that? And no. As the investor, that is going to fall into your responsibility. So you're going to treat this property as though it is one of your own rentals, which at the end of the day, that's the end goal, is that you're able to get the deed or title of that property after those 5 years. So you can rent it out for $1,800. Let's say you agree with the seller to pay him $1,000 a month for the next 5 years, right? So you bought the property at $220. You're paying $6,000 a year. 5 years, you'll pay a total of $30,000 just in principal.
Yeah.
Along with collecting that $800 a month. It wouldn't be completely $800 a month cash flow, just because of taxes and insurance. Those are things that you will also have to pay.
Right.
And if the tenant is paying all the utilities, so
most likely, yeah.
We'll just act as though they are.
Yeah.
In this instance, so you're still cash flowing roughly probably about $500 to $600 a month, along with strictly paying down that principal for the next 30 years. So you purchase at $220, you go down to $190 after 5 years, and then from appreciation, I mean, we know that on average the value of a property goes up 2% per year.
Yeah. So
over 5 years, your $220,000 property will be about $242,000 after, the average appreciation over that 5 year time. Plus, you've already had $30,000 of principal paid down to $190. Where in this instance, let's say you were able to have enough money by then to finally pay the whole thing off, whatnot. If you want to keep it like that, not many people do, or they'll just collect full cash flow, have 100% equity in the property. Yeah. I wouldn't say that's the best instance to do. If that's something you want to do, then go ahead. A lot of times they'll do a cash out refi. So what that is just refinancing the property with a bank after those 5 years. They'll typically give you 70 to 75% of ARV back. So if ARV is 240, you're looking at 70%. What would that be? You're at what?
I don't even know.
120
Yeah.
plus 7%, 240, 24, 48. You're looking at 168. Pay down principal to 190. Okay, not the best example. But you kind of get what I'm going.
You get the gist.
You get the gist of,
yeah,
I mean, if it is worth 240, you only owe 190 on it. You could flat out outright sell it at that point after the 5 years.
Make a good profit off of it.
Make a solid like 40,000 off of it.
Yeah.
And once again, that's only coming 5,000 out of pocket for a down payment, 5,000 in repairs. Holding it, cash flowing $500 to $600 a month for 5 years straight or consecutively, and then reselling it in the end to bring home another additional 30 to 40, maybe even $50,000 just based on your market and appreciation.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a great option that you would look into if you are looking to acquire some of those rental properties and have that nice cash flow coming in monthly.
Most definitely. And that's just the seller financing side. That's why it's like, it's crazy how creative you can get.
You can go way deeper than what I just explained too.
Yeah. And like you can also do, so like we were saying with subject to is where you're taking over the existing mortgage that the seller has. You can also do a subject to deal mixed with the seller financing deal. Do like a mini hybrid. But I feel like I kind of said what subject to was too. Like
yeah, you gave a good idea. Subject to is I would say more straightforward.
Yeah.
Than seller finance.
Yeah.
You can't get quite as creative with it. I mean, you still can do a lot of things like lease option agreements once you have that subject to in place, and getting that kind of down payment, rent to own situation.
Right.
There are other avenues that you could venture down when doing a subject to, but pretty straightforward is you just take over their mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, do you want to give an example for subject to, just so? If not, I can.
Yeah, I can give an example.
Okay, I feel like it's easier whenever you have an example.
So, like, you can visualize it.
Right.
So let's say, you have a house, I reach out to you, you say, yeah, I want to sell, I have a mortgage, but you want,
Let's say the property is $100,000 and my remaining mortgage is $95,000.
Yeah. So I would basically come and say, the way we can make this work is if I take over your mortgage. I wouldn't say it like that, but...
because if I, as the seller of this property, go to list it on the market, I'm going to have to pay that real estate fee.
You're going to have to end up bringing money to the table.
I'm going to have to bring money to the table at the end of the day because I only have $5,000 in equity.
Right.
So an option like subject to will come in very handy for somebody in this kind of situation.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
So I would come over, say, yep, I can take over your mortgage. I can also give you some money if you need a place to go. Give you
no way, really?
Like $5,000 or something. It doesn't.
Oh my God.
It's all gonna be different per the seller's, story of
their
situation of what they need. But I basically come in, take over the mortgage, and we haven't done one yet, but we have like knowledge on it, so I like being super transparent.
Yeah.
So sometimes I don't know like 100% of exactly like what documents you need, everything like that, but we have the, people around us, our mentors, stuff like that can help us whenever, we come across something.
Judah.
Judah, Dom, a lot of people. But what was I saying? I honestly
So let's say that you acquire the property from me. You just take over my mortgage of $95,000. You're able to give me a couple thousand just to get back on my feet. Maybe go rent an apartment out for the next couple months, something of the sort.
But so I would make the payments to the bank. So whichever loan, whichever bank he got, let's say he went with Wells Fargo, right? So
we don't like those ones.
No, I don't know. That's just like a no one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Something that everyone knows. But like, let's say he went with Wells Fargo. I don't have to get a pre-approval with Wells Fargo. Like, they're not checking anything of my credit or anything like that. Literally, they transferred the deed, I believe, or I don't know. I don't know.
So in this instance, I know a lot of you who are a little more experienced are going to start saying like, how about due on sale clause? So like, whenever property is transferred from one person to another, sometimes the bank will see that and be like, well, where's the rest of our money at not thinking like these people are just going to continue to keep the same kind of loan or mortgage and make those payments on a monthly basis. From what we've heard, I can't say from firsthand experience because, as she mentioned, we've never done one of these deals yet. I'd love to, just haven't. From what we've heard, though, is I've never met a single person that has ran into this issue, along with some of our really higher end investors. Like this one property, this guy who owns a whole property management company, owns like over 8,000. Yeah, 8,000 units or doors.
Property manages over 8,000 doors, and he never came across this issue and said that the only way this issue is going to be brought up if you're not making your payments, right?
If you do have some kind of default for a couple consecutive months in a row, then.
But I feel like it's different. Like there's some people like that say like it does happen. Like even Pace Morby was saying how like it does happen, but it's like once in a blue moon. But when it did happen, like I think he did like a lease option or something to offset it, or he talked to the bank and negotiated with them, and then they were fine.
So there is another option. There's actually due on sale clause insurance now.
That as well, yeah.
So if that were to take place, you could always get that insurance policy, and then they would be able to handle that whole situation. Yeah. Okay, so let's say, you take over my mortgage, you give me a couple $1,000. What are you gonna do?
So,
let's say my mortgage, my monthly payment is about like $800. PMI.
$800. So you always want to see what it's going to rent out for. Right. You know, before even moving forward with the deal and like telling the seller you can do this, this, and this, you always want to start off. I mean, you can look at comps on Zillow if you don't have the MLS.
You can talk to realtors in your area. You can talk to other investors who do own rental properties within that area, just to kind of get a really specific number of what you can be expecting monthly while renting out that property.
Right. And, you know, sometimes the seller may not want nothing. They just may want out of the property where you're not doing a seller financing deal on top of it. Right. But if you are to do a seller financing deal on top of it, so let's say the mortgage is, what did you say?
$95,000.
95. Oh no, like the monthly payment.
$800.
So let's say the monthly payment's $800 and the seller, you know, is okay with getting, you know, cash flow of $200 per month. So you're all in $1,000, but the rental.
You said sellers receiving cash flow of $200 a month?
Yeah, if you do like a seller financing on top of a subject to.
So that would be a hybrid deal.
Yeah, and then so you're all in $1,000. So let's say that property rents for $1,800 a month. Then, I mean that's pretty high, but
that's high for a $100,000 house.
Yeah.
But so as Stephanie just kind of went on about, there's an option to do a subject to with a seller finance deal on top of it. We typically call that a hybrid deal.
But you don't have to. Like regular subject to is you're literally just taking over the payments.
Right. So you're taking over those payments. You're including your taxes and insurance into those monthly mortgage payments. Yeah. Seeing what the rent is. If there is a good enough amount of margin there, then that's definitely a deal you would want to look into. And typically those are going to be deals where the homeowner is having some kind of financial struggle affording that property.
Yeah. They're getting ready to go to pre-foreclosure. You do want to make sure you, like, say they're in pre-foreclosure and they're back like $40,000. You got to get those payments up to date, and then start making those monthly payments.
And where would you get that information from?
What, like,
on their back taxes or back liens, or
you go to public records or the county,
the title company. Yeah, whenever they can run the title of the property. Yeah, those are all people who can resources you can get that information from.
But let's get into my favorite one.
I'm gonna say it starts with an N.
That's right. Novations are probably gonna be the best one in 2023. And a novation is basically when you are just like a wholesale deal, right? So you're going up to the property, a seller that is in distress, they want to sell, blah, blah, blah. You know, you have the contract all signed with that person of what price you want it under contract for. But instead of just marking it out, putting it on Facebook Marketplace, you have the ability to put it on the MLS. Okay. And, once you find a good investor-friendly agent to put it on the MLS, and once you find an end buyer, that's where you have that novation agreement come in place where it is replacing you. So that end buyer is replacing you in the initial agreement that you had with the seller.
Sure.
All right. So this is a great way because you're not just focusing on cash buyers, investors when it comes to wholesaling, but when you come to a novation, you're focusing on like every single buyer out there, FHA, conventional, USDA, VA buyers.
It does
depend on the property though too.
The commission, yeah.
So if it is a fixer upper, it's not going to get approved for like an FHA or any government loan. It could conventional. Yeah, conventional. They're not as strict, so it could be fine with conventional. Cash, you're always good.
Cash is great.
But the thing about novations too, you're able to fix up, on the property. I mean, you can tell the seller, I'm going to do this, this, and this. It's just better for the property to stay in your name and do it as this, like a novation, instead of me actually purchasing the property, getting a private or hard money lender, then I have to deal with interest rates, and then I'm not even able to pay this much for the property as you would want. Like this way, doing it this way as a novation favors, your numbers.
So let's say I'm a seller. I'm just like, well, if you're just going to take my property and list it, then why wouldn't I just do that myself?
Yeah.
What's kind of your argument to that?
So if they say that, I say, completely, like, go for it. Like, you want to push them, let them do that, all right? But they'll see how hard it is where, okay, it probably won't sell. Whereas most sellers that don't want to list it, they just don't want to deal with the hassle of the showings. They don't want to deal with agents or anything like that, where you can come in and say, hey, I'm going to do this and this and this to the property, clean it up a little bit, help you get this stuff moved out, and I will give you this price of $100,000. Like, this is all going to be yours. You have to deal with your mortgage if you have a mortgage on it, but this $100,000, that's what I can give you. All right. And then anything above that is going to be, for us, our profit, because we, are putting work into the property, which you don't have to, but,
yeah, absolutely.
We are putting work onto the property, but we're also going to be paying for your realtor fees. That's going to come out of our profit and the closing costs. So you don't have to worry about that or the transfer tax. Yeah. So that's where they're like, okay, they're taking over the property. They're going to do some work to it. And I don't have to stress. Right. Like, this is a good deal.
I'm getting that guaranteed number at the end of the day.
Yeah.
As long as they're not in like a super quick rush just to get that all cash, then this could be a great option. One of my favorite things to say when pitching this strategy to a seller is, I'm looking to actually become your partner on your property. They'll be like, well, what do you mean become my partner? I'm like, listing a property is a lot of work. Having to go find the right realtor that you like, getting those professional pictures done, having to have multiple showings at your property.
Yeah.
Having to listen to all the offers, having to go and do like the property disclosure, the lead-based paint disclosure, blah, blah, blah.
We won't get into like the POA stuff.
Yeah, they would have to do that unless you have POA of the property.
Yeah. We can dive deeper in another episode if you guys want to learn more about novations and stuff.
Right. And they're just like, oh yeah, so you're explaining this. That's just kind of all the steps I'll have to go through. Like, at the end of the day, you might not even get that price that you really want just because you have to pay all those fees. Plus, what if the market just doesn't support that value on this property based off its current condition?
Yeah.
It's like, I could come in, I could partner with you, so I'm not going to buy it from you, but I'll come in, I'll use my own money.
Keep the property in your name.
I'll use my own money. I'll come in, do some work to the property. I can guarantee you're going to get this number at the end of the day whenever the property sells.
Right.
But I'm also going to handle the headache of having to deal with the title company. I'm going to have to deal with the realtors. I'm going to have to deal with, putting the work in to make this property high enough of a price in order for you to get that price and for me to still make a profit. So I'm going to be taking on all these responsibilities and quote unquote headaches in order just to make your life a little easier, give you a higher price at the end of the day versus an all cash offer, which many of these other investors would give you instantly, just at a way lower price.
Yeah.
So doing a route like this, if you're in no serious hurry and like you don't need this property sold ASAP, then I feel as though this would be probably your best option, especially if you don't have all that money to throw into making the property look nice and pretty and having it fixed up.
And you'd be surprised, like, in the beginning stages when I heard about novations and stuff,
I was thinking like, wow.
I was like, why would a seller want to do that? Like, why wouldn't they just list it themselves? But sellers have situations where they want you to come in and help. Yeah. You know?
I'm going to give a real brief example on this one. Mm-hmm. Just kind of lay it out for you guys once again. So, let's say ARV of a property is...
Oh, I'll do a real deal.
You want to do our deal?
I was going to do the very first novation I was a part of. It wasn't, so this novation, I was the agent helping the investors.
Oh, I know.
So this is a really good deal, right? So with this deal, they got it under contract for, I want to say like $490 something. I can't remember exactly. Yeah. $490 or $480, right? And then I came in, I listed it for them, put it on the market for like $6 something.
Because you are a licensed realtor.
That's right. And the only thing they did was like the cutting the trees, like trim the trees and the bushes and stuff. They did do some power washing. So more landscaping stuff on the outside. The inside was filled with all his stuff. Like, it was a lot of stuff. But they did use their money to help him, you know, get a moving company and get all that stuff out. So like, you know, they helped the seller a lot. Right. So we were able to find a buyer at like $635. Right? And they got it in the 4s. Yeah. So it's just completely insane. And this seller was going into pre-foreclosure. He just wanted to be done. He wanted to get a rental property. So, you know, with this being a novation, they got the novation contract all squared away. I didn't know, like I was learning as I was doing it because this was the first time I was hearing about novations and stuff. So we got the novation agreement. You know, we made sure it had their LLC, it had the seller, and it had the end buyer. Yeah. And then, you know, everyone signed that. Process goes along smoothly, just like a regular wholesale deal. And they're able to walk away with over 6 figures in a novation deal. Whereas if they would have bought this deal and, you know, did a fix and flip with, you know, hard or private money, they probably wouldn't have got that much money.
You probably want to hit that 6-figure mark where with the novation route, they were able to get well over 6 figures.
And honestly, if they did a fix and flip, like they literally went in, painted the whole house. It was a big house, so like the rehab budget would have been high. It probably would have sold for maybe, I don't know, $715 or so. So they probably could have got more, but that would have took way more time, like 4 months or so, where this took literally like 2 months. Right. You know, so
yeah, I mean, novation, I do agree with you where that is one of the best options going into 2023. Even though the market is not the hottest and you still have to be conservative with the amount that you agree upon with the seller for her to get her final payday, you just have to make sure after all fees included and any repairs you're doing to the property that you still have enough margin there for you to be able to make some kind of profit. Yeah. And it's good for beginners because
there's no risk. There's really no risk.
A little bit.
But no risk compared to a fix and flip.
Yeah. And the other thing, why this is works really well for beginners is because, as we were talking about in the beginning of this episode, is finding that private money and hard money. Like, they're looking for people with experience. Yeah. With this case, you don't have to have any private money, hard money loans, nothing.
No, but as soon as you do novations and you do a couple...
And that shows you have experience.
It shows your experience, and that's easier to get private money lenders.
Right, so that's just a great
private and hard money lenders.
Yeah, so it's just a great beginner step into getting into the real estate, quote-unquote, fix and flip world. Yeah. And showing that you do know what you're doing, you do know how to run your numbers, right? And it just makes the lender feel a little bit more comfortable with you when going into your actual first fix and flip.
That's right. And that's basically it for, you know, all the top, I would say, exit strategies. But
so we talked about wholesaling, assignments, double close. We talked about fix and flip. We talked about seller finance, subject to novations. Yeah. The only 2 areas that I would touch on, maybe not in this episode, but short-term and medium-term rentals. Yeah. I feel like those are something that we could definitely talk about.
Oh, we didn't even talk about rental properties. But
I mean, they're the typical...
They're basically...
I mean, everyone knows.
Everyone knows.
Yeah. I mean...
Because that is an exit strategy, rental properties.
I mean, yeah, definitely. And but I don't want to go into, like...
We don't have to
the different kind of like loans that you could be using for these rental properties because there's so many different options these days. So many.
We'll leave that for another episode.
Especially with like multifamilies, that turns into a whole nother topic. Cap rates, small multi, large multi. Like there's a lot that goes into just traditional investing.
For sure.
Which I would say that's what that is.
Yeah.
Just buying a property, you know, with going through a bank, having a larger percentage as a
house hacking.
House hacking is a great strategy. I'd love to do
another strategy.
I'd love to do a whole episode on that.
We thought we were done, but now we're just coming up with more strategies.
Well, what time are we at?
But
should we keep going?
Guys, I think that's gonna be it for this episode.
Do you know what time we started?
I honestly don't know.
No
but I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up. We were all over the place with this one, so our apologies.
I'm sorry today's episode was not the cleanest thing you'll probably ever see.
But comment down below any other videos, ideas, or questions you guys have. But with that being said, we will catch y'all in the next one.
Thanks for joining.